Thank you. That concludes general questions. The next item of business is First Minister questions. At question number 1, I call Russell Finlay.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The Scottish Fiscal Commission conducts rigorous and independent analysis of tax and the economy in Scotland. Its most recent report outlines that SNP tax rises are costing Scottish workers £1.7 billion each year. So we should have an extra £1.7 billion to spend, but we don't, because the SFC identifies what it calls an economic performance gap with the rest of the UK. This actually reduces the amount available to spend. Does John Swinney know the size of the economic performance gap between SNP-run Scotland and the rest of the UK?
First Minister.
I think the important point to consider here is that the extra revenue that is raised as a consequence of the tax decisions that we have taken in Scotland enable us to invest in public services and in other interventions that support the government's policy agenda. And those changes and differences are, of course, well acknowledged and well understood within Scotland. As one example, we have a much more significant provision of early learning and childcare here in Scotland, which meets the needs of families. And in addition to that, the Scottish Child Payment helps to keep children out of poverty. And of course, in Scotland, we have a falling child poverty rate rather than in the rest of the United Kingdom, where child poverty rates are rising. So there are differences in policy outcomes that come from the decisions the government has made to ask people in higher incomes to pay slightly more in taxation.
Russell Finlay.
More smoke and mirrors from John Swinney, and he doesn't seem to know the figure, so let me help him. SNP tax rises and hard-working Scots should result in £1.7 billion more to spend. But because the SNP-run economy lags behind the rest of the UK, the Scottish Fiscal Commission says they only have £600 million more to spend. So under the SNP, there's a £1.1 billion economic performance gap. And that's just this year. Last year, it was another billion. Over the last 10 years, according to the SFC, the economic performance gap with the rest of the UK adds up to £5.4 billion. Does John Swinney now realise that anti-business SNP policies are costing Scotland a fortune?
First Minister.
I think what's clear from the data is that the improvements in GDP per capita in Scotland under this government, the Scottish Government, since we came to office, have been superior to those in the rest of the United Kingdom. That's what the data tells us, that the Scottish economy, in terms of GDP per capita, has grown at a faster rate in Scotland than in the rest of the United Kingdom. Now, of course, we take a number of steps as a government to invest in the economy. We are supporting the investment in key sectors of the economy, such as renewable energy. We are actively involved in investing in the skills system to support the development of the economy. And, of course, we assist companies by having a competitive business rates regime in Scotland, which reduces the burden of business rates on companies in Scotland, enabling them to invest in their business operations. That's what Scotland gets from the business-friendly SNP government.
Russell Finlay. Thank you.
Sorry, I'll just try and stop laughing for a minute. John Swinney doesn't even seem to accept the economic performance gap exists. It's peak SNP denial. The SFC are saying it. It's in here. The First Minister should try and read it. The SNP have failed to keep up with the rest of the UK. They've made it even worse by wasting billions of pounds of taxpayers' money on a national care service that doesn't treat patients, the endless Calmac ferry scandal, a £1 billion prison with bird and bat boxes, and an annual benefits bill that will soon top £9 billion. The SNP are costing Scotland £1 billion a year in lost growth and countless billions through their sheer incompetence. Isn't this exactly why John Swinney can't bring down bills or improve public services? He's thrown all the money away.
First Minister.
Well, just so that I can be clear to Mr Finlay, under the SNP government since 2007, GDP per person in Scotland has grown by 10.3% compared to 6.1% in the United Kingdom. So that demonstrates that we've had superior economic performance to the rest of the United Kingdom. Now, Russell Finlay, of course, highlights the fact that there are choices to be made about public expenditure, and when he talks about the annual benefits bill, I think he has to be explicit about what he's talking about. What benefits is he going to cut? Because what we believe is important is that we support children to be helped out of poverty. That's part of... Is that what Russell Finlay wants to stop? Does Russell Finlay... I think that's what we're now talking about. Russell Finlay wants to end the Scottish Child Payment and consign more children to poverty.
Let's hear one another.
Well, I'm simply pointing out, Presiding Officer, that there are implications of Mr Finlay saying things like the annual benefits bill is too high. He has to set out where the cuts are going to come from, and the cuts under Mr Finlay will fall on the children of Scotland. I want to lift children out of poverty. Mr Finlay wants to consign children to poverty.
Russell Finlay.
The Scottish Conservative Party wants to lift children and families out of poverty, not keep them trapped on benefits. The SNP waste money on an industrial scale, but unbelievably, Labour looked at the SNP's economic record and then decided to copy them. They've already raised national insurance, but there's more pain to come. The spending review signals a return to tax and spend. Rachel Reeves is shafting business, workers, farmers and the oil and gas industry. But there's at least enough money now for John Swinney to give Scots a tax break. So will he commit to bringing down the burden on Scottish workers and families?
First Minister.
I suppose there's one minor element of that question that I can find some common ground with, which is the damage that's been done to the economy by the decision to increase employers' national insurance contributions. Because we saw from the month of April in the GDP statistics this morning that there has been a contraction of GDP in the United Kingdom, down by 0.3%. Now, I think that could reasonably have been predicted from the increase in employers' national insurance contributions. Indeed, I warned about that. Because if we're going to have an agenda that's focused on growth, I do not understand why the UK Labour government took a decision to support a growth-reducing measure such as employers' national insurance contributions that the evidence now tells us is suppressing growth within the United Kingdom. So that's the context that we're now operating in. What I will say to Mr Finlay is this government will do what it always does. We'll focus on the needs of the people of Scotland. We'll focus on lifting children out of poverty. We'll focus on improving our public services. We'll focus on the journey to net zero, and we'll focus on improving the economic performance of Scotland, just like we've done in the past.
Question number 2, Anna Sarwar.
Presiding Officer, members will be deeply concerned with the planned job losses at Alexander Dennis in Larbert. Our thoughts are with the workforce. Alexander Dennis is an industry leader in bus manufacturing, but this news was not inevitable. It is another result of SNP failure. Under the SNP, the Scottish Government is procuring more buses from China than they are from Scotland. Presiding Officer, Greater Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham has bought almost 4 times as many buses from Alexander Dennis than the SNP government. That's shameful. So can I ask the First Minister, why do the SNP always put foreign businesses and manufacturers before Scotland's workers?
First Minister.
President, so before I come on to address the question that Mr Sarwar has put to me, may I take this opportunity, it's the first time I've had the opportunity since Parliament reconvened this week, to welcome Davy Russell to Parliament as the Member of the Scottish Parliament for Hamilton, Larkhall and Stonehouse, and wish him well. On the important question that Mr Sarwar puts to me about Alexander Dennis, I am deeply concerned about the situation, and this issue has been occupying a great deal of the focus and the attention of the Deputy First Minister and I, and United Kingdom Government ministers, since we became aware of the situation over the last few weeks, and then ultimately to the decision that was announced yesterday. What the Scottish Government has done we've engaged with the company, and over a series of years we have supported Alexander Dennis in the development of their facility in Larbert and in Falkirk. We have assisted them in research and development activity, and indeed, since 2020, Alexander Dennis has secured more zero-emission buses orders than any other single manufacturer through the Scottish Zero Emission Bus Challenge Fund and its predecessor, the Scottish Ultra-Low Emission Bus Scheme. So we have, within the existing arrangements that are permissible, seen a situation where Alexander Dennis have secured more zero-emission bus orders than anybody else. Now, obviously, most bus orders are procured by private organisations in Scotland, run by commercial operators in a deregulated market, and any decisions that the Government is taking must be consistent with the Subsidy Control Act of the United Kingdom, which of course is a material issue in this issue. Having said all of that, I want to make it clear to the workforce at Alexander Dennis and to Parliament today that the Government is engaging very, very closely and firmly to see what we can do to help the situation and to avoid any of the negative implications that the announcement yesterday suggests might be the case.
Anna Sarwar.
That's a rather weak response from the First Minister, because if Greater Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham can find a way within the existing legislation to procure more buses in Scotland, why can't the SNP government? It is another example of weak leadership from John Swinney. Because when Scotland needs buses, they buy from China. When Scotland needs steel for bridges, they buy from China. When we need ferries, they buy from Poland and Turkey, because all they want to do is manufacture grievance, and all they offer is waste and incompetence. They have the powers and they have the money, but as always, they want to blame someone else. Weak, failing leadership from John Swinney. And even his own MSPs are now openly rebelling against him, with senior figures saying he has 2 weeks. They groan in private, let them groan in public now, with senior figures saying he has 2 weeks to come up with a new idea to save his job. But, Presiding Officer, if he hasn't come up with a good idea to improve Scotland in 18 years, what chance has he got of coming up with something now?
First Minister.
Well, what I'm doing, and what the workforce of Alexander Dennis will not be surprised I'm doing, is that I'm focusing on the situation facing the workforce at Alexander Dennis. That's what I'm doing. So let me just tell Mr Sarwar what the Government has done and what it's done over many years to support Alexander Dennis. We've provided £58 million of funding for zero-emission buses since 2020 through the Scottish Ultra-Low Emission Bus Scheme. Scottish Enterprise has also supported Alexander Dennis with £30.3 million in research and development support as a contribution to their research and development activity. Now, that's been part of the partnership that's been undertaken between the Scottish Government and Alexander Dennis. Now, in his comments the other day, Paul Davis, the President and Managing Director of Alexander Dennis, said this, and it's about bus orders, and it's material to the answer I've just given Mr Sarwar. The stark reality is that current UK policy does not allow for the incentivisation or reward of local content, job retention and creation, nor does it encourage any domestic economic benefit. Now, that is the implication of the Subsidy Control Act. Now, what I am doing, what the Deputy First Minister is doing, this is what's commanding my attention and my focus just now, is how can we find a way in which we can remain legally compliant with the Subsidy Control Act and to enable these obstacles to be overcome. Now, in that endeavour, we are engaging very closely with the United Kingdom Government, and I welcome the fact that we have had engagement with the UK Government, and indeed, in a joint letter from the Secretary of State and the Deputy First Minister to the company, the Deputy First Minister and the Secretary of State say this: our governments continue to work closely together on a range of shared issues to support domestic industries in Scotland, and we are keen to work closely with Alexander Dennis at this challenging time. Now, that's us indicating that we are going to do everything we can to find a way through the Subsidy Control Act provisions so the Government can continue to operate within the law, which we must do, but also we can support manufacturing in Scotland, which is my priority.
Anna Sarwar.
If John Swinney can't figure out a way to order buses in Scotland, I suggest he picks up the phone to Andy Burnham and see how he managed to do it almost five times as many bus orders from Manchester. John Swinney and the SNP are out of ideas, out of steam and out of time. Failing to support Scottish manufacturing jobs is just one example. After 18 years in charge, falling education standards, rising violent crime, a deepening NHS crisis, more lives lost to drug deaths and billions of pounds of wasted money. Everyday Scots pay the price for SNP incompetence and are expected to be thankful for it. So it's no wonder that, as shown in Hamilton, Larkhall and Stonehouse, Scots are seeing through the spin and voting for a new direction. But it's not just the public, Presiding Officer. One SNP MSP said about John Swinney, "There is no energy, no fire, no boldness, no long-term vision." They're right, aren't they?
First Minister.
Listen, Mr Sarwar can conjure up all the stuff he wants. He can go through his press cuttings. He can practice it in the mirror in the morning and see how it sounds. I'm going to be focused on delivering answers and solutions for workers who face difficulty in the country. And while Mr Sarwar postures, I'm going to deliver for the workers of Scotland.
Question number 3, Lorna Slater.
Kids can't learn if they're hungry. That's why the Greens campaigned for universal free school meals for P4 and P5 kids, and the further expansion to P6 and P7 kids whose families receive the Scottish Child Payment. It's why we brought the next phase of rollout to S1, S2 and S3 kids receiving SCP to budget negotiations. In August, thousands more high school kids in Aberdeen, Glasgow, Fife, Murray, North Ayrshire, South Lanarkshire, Shetland and the Western Isles will now get free school meals. Does the First Minister agree that this programme must be expanded to all council areas as soon as possible to ensure that no kid goes hungry in school?
First Minister.
I unreservedly accept the importance of the issue of food provision in our schools and tackling the issue of children who come to school hungry, and to make sure that they have a good and solid meal during the day is addressed as part of the Government's policy programme. So there's no disagreement between Lorna Slater and I on that question. The Government's taken pragmatic decisions within the finances available to us to expand the programme to primary 6 and 7 pupils who are eligible for the Scottish Child Payment, and we're obviously taking forward the pilot exercises for secondary pupils that were the subject of constructive dialogue with the Green Party during the budget negotiations. So I'm committed to doing as much as we can. Parliament will be familiar, of course, with the financial challenges that we faced, which were not eased by the spending review yesterday, but we will, of course, engage constructively with other parties about how we can take forward these commitments, which are important to enhance the educational opportunities of children and young people in Scotland.
Lorna Slater.
Expanding free school meals is one way to build the fairer, greener country we know that Scotland can be. But children in Scotland will still be forced into poverty thanks to a Labour government balancing the books on the backs of the poorest, while the wealthiest grow ever richer. The UK government could have scrapped the cruel two-child benefit cap this week. They didn't. Scotland is tired of mitigating Westminster's mistakes. Does the First Minister agree that now is the time to demand that Keir Starmer set out exactly what conditions he believes need to be met to trigger an independence referendum for Scotland so we can get out of this unequal union?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, I agree with Lorna Slater about the importance of Scotland becoming an independent country. And I think it's unacceptable democratically.
Let's hear one another.
I think it's unacceptable democratically for the will of this Parliament which has demanded the power to be able to hold a referendum on independence, is ignored by the United Kingdom Government. I think that is democratically unacceptable. So I agree entirely with Lorna Slater on this point. And if anyone needs to have an explanation about why Scotland would benefit from being an independent country, it comes in the fact that we are about to see, and it was confirmed yesterday, that the spending review is predicated on there being an attack on the poorest and the most vulnerable in our society by a Labour government. So anyone that was thinking that attacks on the poor and the vulnerable in our society were an exclusive preserve of the Conservative Party got a rude awakening yesterday, because it's also the preserve of the Labour Party into the bargain. So the answer to the seesaw politics of attacking the poor and the vulnerable by Westminster is for Scotland to be an independent country, and the sooner that happens, the better.
Question number 4, Kenneth Gibson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the First Minister what the impact on Scotland will be of the Chancellor's Spending Review 2025.
First Minister.
President, so the UK Government Spending Review has left Scotland facing real terms growth of 0.8% a year for our overall block grant funding, lower than the 1.5% average for UK departments. Had our day-to-day resource funding grown in line with overall UK Government spending, we would have over £1.1 billion more to spend on our priorities by 2028-29. This all comes on top of the additional hike in employers' national insurance contributions and planned cuts in support for disabled people. These are the realities of the spending review that need to be understood within Scotland today.
Absolutely. Kenneth Gibson.
I thank the First Minister for that answer. In April, the UK economy shrank by 0.3%, over £712 million, following the devastating impact of Labour's increase in employment national insurance contributions, a blatant jobs tax. Across the UK, 276,000 jobs have been lost since Labour's October budget, with another 109,000 expected in May. And annual UK debt interest payments now stand over £133 billion, £2,000 for every man, woman and child in the UK. Amidst this economic mismanagement, can the First Minister say what will be the impact on Scotland's economy of lower than average funding over the next few years relative to UK departments, with Scotland being short-changed by £1,100 million over the next 3 years?
First Minister.
So the implications of the spending review are that the real terms growth in the Scottish Block Grant will be 0.8% a year, but it is lower than the 1.5% average for UK departments. Now, that demonstrates the scale of the financial challenge that we face in Scotland. Now, the Government will have to respond to that. We will have to address those issues as part of the medium-term financial strategy, the spending review and the budget for successive years. But what it demonstrates is that the United Kingdom is not providing the sustained investment in public services that are required as a consequence of the years of austerity. We need to invest to grow, and that was not delivered by the spending review yesterday.
Question number 5, Liam Kerr.
To ask the First Minister what the Scottish Government's position is on whether the Home Leave for Prisoners system is operating appropriately and as intended.
First Minister.
Management and decisions relating to home leave is an operational matter for the Scottish Prison Service. All decisions are subject to robust risk assessment and risk management planning. If released, individuals are subject to licence conditions and can be recalled to custody if these are breached. The use of home leave and temporary release are a well-established and necessary part of preparing an individual for eventual release and reintegration to the community.
Liam Kerr.
Really? Well, a year into a 4-year sentence for repeatedly subjecting Demi Hanaway to appalling mental and physical abuse, even while she was pregnant, violent thug Andrew Brown will get home leave, with 1 week a month out of prison. Demi's mum, Helen, said, "We had not been consulted or warned. The very thought that we could have walked right into him has left us sickened to our stomachs. A violent monster like Brown should not be walking the streets just a year after being sentenced to almost 4 years." So is the First Minister seriously telling Helen that home leave is working as intended? And if not, how will he change it?
First Minister.
As I indicated in the earlier answer, the management and decisions relating to home leave is an operational matter for the Scottish Prison Service, who have to make careful judgments about each individual cases. Now, I think Mr Kerr has put information into the parliamentary discussion just now. I understand that the individual in question has not been granted home leave, but has had unescorted day release, which is a different concept in the process. Now, as I have indicated before in Parliament, the case that involves Demi Hanaway is a tragic case, and I express my sympathies to Demi's family. I will explore the details of the issues that Mr Kerr has put on the record today to determine if there is any further action or intervention that can be taken, subject to respecting the operational independence of the Scottish Prison Service to arrive at these judgments. And of course, I do put on the record that the Lord Advocate has instructed an investigation into the circumstances of Demi's death, and that is underway.
Claire Baker.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. As the First Minister is aware, I have raised the case of Demi Hanaway in the Chamber before, and as he recognises, the Lord Advocate has instructed a fresh investigation into Demi's death, which does include the role that Andrew Brown has possibly played in Demi's death. So does he share my concerns about the decision on home leave, and also how can we maintain the integrity of the current investigation if Andrew Brown is allowed on home leave and is looking at release date for February?
First Minister.
I think the issues, the processes are distinct processes, and the Lord Advocate's examination and exploration that she has requested will be undertaken independently of any other processes, and I can't prejudge where that investigation and scrutiny may lead. It would be Claire Baker will understand. I can't intervene in the actions of the Lord Advocate in this respect. We'll take away the issue that Claire Baker raises with me about any interconnection between those two different processes, one of which is undertaken by the Scottish Prison Service, one of which is undertaken independently of ministers under the supervision of the Lord Advocate. And if there is anything further that I can advise Claire Baker about, I acknowledge her long-standing interest in this case, I will do so. But I think the most I can say at this moment is that these are two independent processes that are being undertaken. But if there is any appropriate connection to be established, I will make sure that is the case.
Question number 6, Faisal Chowdhury.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the First Minister how the Scottish Government is working to ensure that patients are accurately informed of waiting times for NHS treatments following referrals to a specialist.
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, we recognise the importance of transparent and regular communication with parents, which is why we have in place a standard package of communications that all health boards should be providing. Our revised waiting times guidance, published in December 2023, ensures that patients are provided with clear communications throughout their care journey, setting out what they should expect while they are waiting for their appointment, test or treatment. To assist patients in accessing waiting time information prior to treatment, Public Health Scotland offers an online platform with initial planned care waiting times indicating the typical wait durations over the past quarter.
Faisal Chowdhury.
Thank the First Minister for the answer. It's been over a year since my constituent was referred to a dermatologist. He doesn't know when he will be seen. His skin condition and mental health are getting worse. In NHS Lothian, the number of people waiting over 52 weeks to see a dermatologist has doubled in the last year. Will the First Minister admit that his government has lost control of waiting times for specialist care, and will he apologise to my constituent?
First Minister.
As I've made clear on a number of occasions, there are individuals who are waiting too long for treatment. There are many people treated timorously within the National Health Service, but there are many people that are waiting too long. And I regret and I apologise for the fact that people are waiting too long. We are trying to recover services as quickly as we can from the COVID pandemic, and that has the focus of the government. Now, Mr Chowdhury raises with me specifically the issue of dermatology services. The government is introducing and is rolling out a digital dermatology service involving all GP practices in the country, with the aim of reducing the waiting times that individuals are waiting for dermatology processes, by improving the flow of cases and the handling of cases as part of the reforms that we are undertaking. So I assure Mr Chowdhury that those issues are being progressed by the Government with the aim of addressing the issue that he puts to me today.
Brief supplementary, Joe Fitzpatrick.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The issue Mr Chowdhury raises is really important. So can the First Minister say more about what the Scottish Government is doing to reduce waiting times for my constituents in Dundee and across the country? And can he specifically give us an update on recent targeted investment and how that is supporting delivery?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, in the last financial year we invested an additional £30 million to drive action to address the longest waits. We expected that would deliver 64,000 appointments and procedures, but it in fact delivered 105,500 appointments and procedures. For the year ahead, more than £106 million of additional funding has been assigned to speciality waits, where it can have the greatest impact against the longest waits. That will enable us to deliver over 150,000 extra appointments and procedures in the coming year, which will ensure people receive the care they need as quickly as possible.
Brief supplementary, Sandish Gulhani.
Thank you. And a declaration of interest as a practising NHS GP. I was contacted by John, who has already waited 40 weeks for orthopaedic surgery. He's had no updates from the Health Board. He looked himself and found his wait increasing, starting at 52 weeks in September and now 67. The uncertainty is a major source of frustration and pain. So, First Minister, after reading out what is not happening, and at a time we can track our online orders to the minute, why is there no transparency for waiting times for hospital appointments?
First Minister.
Well, I think the information is available about the length of waits, and Mr Chowdhury has put information to me about the visibility of that information, and Dr Gulhani has just done likewise. So that information is available, and I'm indicating to Parliament these long waits are unacceptable. That's why the focus of our intervention is about addressing those long waits and ensuring that people do not wait as long as Dr Gulhani puts to me in the case that he raises with me. So the Government is absolutely focused on reducing those long waits. I want to see more progress being undertaken. It is the basis of regular dialogue between the Health Secretary and I and the leadership of the National Health Service. All boards are seized of this importance, and I reiterate that today.
Thank you. There is a particularly high level of interest in supplementary questions across the Chamber today. I'd be grateful for concise questions and responses, and I call Michael Matheson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The First Minister will be aware of the deep concern in my constituency at the announcement made by Alexander Dennis yesterday. Given the risk posed to over 400 jobs in my constituency, having listened to the exchanges earlier in the Chamber, the last thing the workforce in my constituents need is for their future employment to be simply turned into a political football. Indeed, they deserve much better. Now more than ever, the workforce need the Scottish and UK Government to work together to prevent the closure of the Camlin and the Larbert sites. These jobs are not yet lost, and everything should be done to secure them for the future. Bus manufacturing has taken place in Camlin for over 100 years. It's part of the local community's DNA. Well, I've listened to the exchanges so far. Can I ask the First Minister if he would commit to 2 points in taking these forward with the UK Government? To look at maximising the potential for new orders across the UK for ADL in the weeks and months ahead, and secondly, to address the fundamental point that the company have highlighted, and that is the uneven playing field that they are facing in competing with overseas manufacturers as a result of the Subsidy Act. It needs to be addressed if we're to secure these jobs, and I'd ask the First Minister to do so.
First Minister.
President Officer, I entirely understand the deep concern of Mr Matheson about the implications for Alexander Dennis in his constituency. He has been assiduous over all of his time in Parliament in supporting the company and in enabling and supporting its development. As I indicated in my earlier answers, we have had a number of programmes of investment in Alexander Dennis. I hope that gives Mr Matheson assurance of the Government's commitment. We have also seen bus orders undertaken and delivered by Alexander Dennis, but the company have highlighted to us these significant restrictions in the current competitive climate, because of the implications of the Subsidy Control Act, on the ability for public sector procurement to be able to take account of local content, job retention and job creation. Now, these are issues that we are exploring with the United Kingdom Government, and I give Mr Matheson the absolute assurance that the Government enters into this consultation determined to safeguard the future of employment in his constituency.
Graham Simpson.
There have been various funds from the Scottish Government to help bus companies buy electric buses. One of them was launched by Michael Matheson, and that money, our money, has gone to buy Chinese buses. And some of us were warning years ago that this would end in tears. And that's where we've got to. So the First Minister says there's a problem with the Subsidy Control Act. Yes, there is. But we've known about that for years. Why is he only now wanting to do something about it?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, I am trying to handle this issue, as my answers have given today, in a way that is not making any party political remarks. But I have to point out to Mr Simpson that the Subsidy Control Act was legislated for by the Conservative Government in the United Kingdom. It is the UK legislation that we are obliged by law to follow. I cannot act in a fashion out with the provisions of the law, because I will just not be enabled to do so. I will not have a legal basis for acting in that fashion. So there are ways in which we can work with the United Kingdom Government to try to address that issue. That's the spirit that we have entered into on this issue. Deputy First Minister has discussed it with the Secretary of State for Scotland. I've discussed these issues with the company, and we will be doing everything we can to try to address this situation.
Sarah Boyack.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, will the Scottish Government request that the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service reconsider its plans to close Marionville Fire Station in light of the recent fire at Cableswind in Leith, the community petition, which has now got over 3,500 signatures, and reports that plans like this would weaken fire services in Edinburgh and the Lothians, while our fire services are under increasing pressure, for example from wildfires like we saw last month in West Lothian?
First Minister.
So obviously this is an issue that is within the responsibility of the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, and I'm not clear in my own mind at what stage the Marionville proposal is at, but in general the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service delivery review includes 23 options for change, which will be the subject of a full public consultation which commences at the end of this month. Now, I don't know if I would imagine that the proposal that Sarah Boyack is putting to me is part of that process. It will be subject to the dialogue within that consultation. As I answered a question a few weeks ago, which I think was from Rachel Hamilton, the Fire and Rescue Service must be mindful of the demand for intervention, for the pattern of activity that places demands on its services in coming to any operational decisions. And there will be the full opportunity for the points that Sarah Boyack has made to be considered by the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service.
Bob Doris.
Presiding Officer, a constituent of mine is a displaced Ukrainian national as a consequence of Putin's illegal war. The researcher at Glasgow University, whose post will end shortly, efforts to secure a new post are hampered by a work visa which expires in October next year. Whilst an extension has been applied for, they will be currently losing out on job opportunities. She wishes certainty for her and her daughter, who is excelling at Clevedon Secondary School. Will the First Minister get the Scottish Government to contact the Home Office to ensure that not only my constituent but also other displaced Ukrainian nationals in Scotland get the certainty they need to continue to live and work here?
First Minister.
It's an important point that Mr Doris puts to me, and I'll ask the Minister for Equalities to discuss the specific case with Mr Doris to obtain the details and to make those representations to the United Kingdom Government. Of course, the point that Mr Doris raises will have wider application within Scotland. There will be many individuals who are here on temporary arrangements as a consequence of the illegal invasion of Ukraine. Scotland has welcomed those individuals. They make a huge contribution to our society, and there is a general issue that will affect individuals where clarity would be beneficial. So I will ensure that the Minister is in touch with Mr Doris, and we will make representations about that case and the wider issue to the UK Government.
Pam Gossel.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. After over 4 decades of tireless work, Clydebank Women's Aid in my region of Western Bartonshire will be shutting down. Western Bartonshire has the second highest rate of domestic abuse in Scotland, with 153 incidents per 10,000 people. We must not underestimate the excellent work these organisations do by acting as a lifeline for many survivors. I have been contacted by many constituents and organisations. This decision will have an enormous and devastating impact on the local community. Can I ask the First Minister what support will the Scottish Government be providing to organisations helping survivors of domestic abuse so that they can continue on the good work they do, especially as domestic abuse cases are rising in Scotland?
First Minister.
Of course, I'm sorry to hear about the information that Pam Gossel set out about Clydebank Women's Aid. The Government has, of course, taken a number of steps to legislate to take action on domestic abuse, not least of which the Domestic Abuse Scotland Act 2018, which created a specific offence of domestic abuse that incorporates coercive and controlling behaviour. The Delivering Equally Safe Fund provides £21.6 million this year to 115 projects focused on preventing and eradicating violence against women and girls. Those projects will be available across the country to make sure that there is support in communities the length and breadth of Scotland to assist women who are facing domestic abuse. And obviously, I want to make sure, and I will take the opportunity after this question time to make sure that there is relevant and appropriate access in the Clydebank area for support under this funding scheme.
Katie Clark.
Enabled care workers are on strike and have been demonstrating outside this Parliament today. Scottish care worker pay is being raised to £12.60 per hour this year. Does the First Minister agree that enabled care workers deserve a minimum wage of £15 per hour now?
First Minister.
I greatly value, and the Government greatly values, the vital role that social care workers play in delivering high-quality care services across Scotland. Pay negotiations are a matter for trade unions and employers, and I would urge both parties to work together to reach an agreement which is fair for the workforce and affordable for Enable, and I would encourage that to be the case.
David Torrance.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the First Minister what assessment the Scottish Government has made of the impact that recent changes to funding allocations by the Scottish Funding Council will have on 5 colleges' ability to deliver high-quality education and training opportunities.
First Minister.
Sir, colleges play a vital role in our communities, and that's why the budget allocation for this year sees a 2.1% uplift to the college resource allocation. It's important to be clear that the Funding Council has ensured no college will see a reduction in teaching funding in this financial year compared to the last financial year. Fife College will be receiving a 1.26% increase in teaching funding and a 4.9% increase in capital maintenance funding in the final allocations. And of course, Fife College will be moving into new facilities in the Dunfermline Learning Campus next year, which have been supported by tens of millions of pounds of Scottish Government investment. Operational decisions, including course provision and staffing, are of course a matter for individual colleges, and I hope this answer provides Mr Torrance with some of the context around the final decisions that have been made.
Douglas Lumsden.
Presiding Officer, the First Minister will know that Scott Beef in Inverurie has shut its doors with a loss of 90 jobs. This is a devastating blow to families affected and also the farming in general in the North East. So will the First Minister join me in meeting with members of the farming community in the North East to hear their concerns on how this latest closure will affect them?
First Minister.
I'm concerned to hear about that decision, and obviously the Government will make available support through the Partnership Action for Continuing Employment to the employees who may well face redundancy and an impact. I'm very happy for the Agriculture Minister, Jim Fairley, to meet with Mr Lumsden and his constituents to discuss this issue.
Aaron Adam.
Thank you. Thank you, Presiding Officer. This week marks Carers Week, and this afternoon I'm hosting a roundtable in Parliament to discuss the Family Fund's new report, The Cost of Caring 2025, and the urgent challenges it highlights for families raising disabled and seriously ill children. With this in mind, can I ask the First Minister what action is his government taking to better support carers across Scotland?
First Minister.
President, we take a number of actions to support the invaluable role of carers within our society. We are investing over £88 million per year in local carer support through Local Authority Carers Act funding. Unpaid carers will be up to £4,400 better off by the end of 2025 due to the introduction of Carers Allowance Supplement in 2018, with over £330 million in payments to date, a payment that's only available here in Scotland. Through the Care Reform Bill passed this week, we will establish a right to breaks from caring to support carers' health and well-being. And ahead of that being introduced, we've introduced increased funding for voluntary sector short breaks to £13 million, which includes £2.2 million to the Family Fund's Take a Break Scotland programme for parent carers. That's alongside £2.9 million this year for Family Fund's Scotland Grant programme for families on a low income raising a disabled child. So I hope that gives Can Adams some confidence that the Government is standing with carers and recognising the invaluable contribution they make to our society today.
Thank you. That concludes First Minister's questions. The next item of business is a member's business debate in the name of Colin Smith. There will now be a short suspension to allow the public gallery and the chamber to clear.